Hello, friends. My name is Ty, and I'm going to read to you. It's time for Chapter 5 of The Watch. Here we go. Quinn shifted his foot a few inches forward on the polished hardwood floor, lengthening his stance and making a little distance on the man who stood opposite him. The other man, slender and dressed in the traditional karate gi, as Quinn was, did not move, but looked at Quinn mildly, his hands held before him in loose fists. With all the speed he could manage, Quinn launched himself at his opponent. He threw several rapid punches, his fists streaking through the air, while his right foot flashed upwards at the other's face. Quinn's opponent danced backwards, gracefully, slapping away Quinn's punches. He ducked under Quinn's high side kick, and his own foot lashed out, sweeping the leg that Quinn was standing on. Quinn fell heavily to the floor, and the other man was on top of him, quick as a thought, his fist streaking down to stop half an inch from Quinn's nose. "I think the match is mine," the slender man said. "Us, sensei," Quinn replied, as he accepted his opponent's hand and was pulled to his feet. Stan Takishita, the owner and head instructor of the Resolution Shotokan Karate Club, turned to the other students who were sparring, yelling, and sweating on the floor. "Yame!" Stan yelled, signaling everyone to cease their action. He waited for everyone to turn and give him their attention. "Good training. Class is finished." The eclectic collection of people all bowed to stand in unison and then formed a single straight line facing the front wall of the dojo where the Canadian and Japanese flags hung. On a command from Quinn, the highest-ranking student in the class other than Stan, they all knelt, meditated briefly, and were dismissed. As Quinn walked towards the locker rooms, pulling the black belt from his waist and slinging it over his neck, Stan called him over. "Is there something wrong, Quinn?" No, I'm fine," he replied, puzzled by the question. "Why do you ask?" Stan shrugged and pushed his hands into the baggy sleeves of his karate gi. "Your performance here in class tonight has been far less than what I've come to expect. I thought something might be bothering you." Stan sat on one of the wooden benches that ringed the dojo floor and indicated for Quinn to do the same. Quinn sat and looked at his feet. He had some idea what was coming, and he wasn't sure he was up to dealing with it. Like several of the other people in his life, Stan thought Quinn was struggling with the emotions associated with the taking not only one, but two lives in a short period of time. As Quinn's sensei, Stan seemed to be feeling some need to counsel Quinn. Quinn was about to tell Stan that he was fine and didn't need to talk and leave as fast as possible to avoid the awkward silence that would follow. Before Quinn could speak, Stan stopped him with an upheld hand. "I'm not going to lecture you," he said. "I'm not a guru, or a counselor, or your dad, and I don't want to talk to you about your feelings or give you a hug." Quinn blinked at him, a mixture of surprise and relief painting a dumb expression on his face. "All I want to say," Stan continued, "is this is one place where nothing from the outside should bother you. Leave the rest of your life behind when you step onto the dojo floor. Gather your focus about you. Replenish yourself. Your training will be better and the things will look clearer when you pick them up later." Stan smiled and clapped Quinn on the back. "Sometimes all you need is a little focus. Make sense?" Quinn nodded. "Sure, sensei." "Besides," Stan said as he stood from the bench, "you are one of our warriors, a keeper of our city. You, of all people, need to be sharp when you leave here. Have your head about you. You are an accomplished fighter and far better than you've shown me in the past weeks. If you're that sloppy next time, I'm going to break your nose to teach you a lesson." Involuntarily, Quinn reached up and gripped his nose, which he'd had broken before and had not enjoyed the experience. He also knew Stan was not making a threat, only a statement of fact. As one of the better karate fighters in the country, he could make that statement a reality. "It won't happen again," Quinn said. Stan nodded, satisfied, and walked across the dojo floor into a small office at the back corner of the building. Quinn pulled his zip-up hoodie over his gi, grabbed his gym bag. He stepped out the front door into the crisp air, his breath misting before him. He imagined that his expelled breath were the problems he was facing, the burdens he carried, and tried to push them out, making them dissolve in the cold dark. He watched his breath for several moments until the sweat on his face began to freeze. He felt better, maybe even a little lighter. He was making his way to his car when he heard a voice behind him. "Evening, Constable Sullivan." Quinn's right hand dropped to his hip, reaching for the gun that was locked up back at his office, as he spun to face the speaker. A thick mop of blonde hair made him relax, but only slightly. He felt his troubles creeping back out of the dark and jeering at him like drunken gremlins.
"Hi, Miss Donnelly," he said, recognizing Autumn.
She stood, smiling at him, dressed in a thick coat and multicolored mittens. What are you doing here?" he asked as he looked around the parking lot, which was nearly deserted. The dojo was located in the west end of Resolution, in the industrial district near the harbor. There were hardly any buildings. Oh, Logan. Hang on. My cat came to visit. Do you want to be on the YouTube? Do you want to be part of story time? Probably not, but here he is anyway. No, don't stand on the keyboard. The dojo was located in the west end of Resolution in the industrial district near the harbor. There were hardly any buildings or businesses here open after dark that he could possibly imagine Autumn Donnelly would want to attend. "I went to your office to talk to you. One of the other constables said you weren't working but might be here," she said, still smiling. Quinn frowned. It was no secret in the detachment that he practiced karate, but he was not happy that one of his co-workers would tell a client where he was on his time off. Dude, when you're trying to bite the book, it makes it hard for me to read it. You're going to get banished if you can't behave. It was no secret in the detachment that he practiced karate, but he was not happy that one of his co-workers would tell a client where he was on his time off. He made a mental note to find out who it was and kicked them squarely in the nuts. "I'm not working today, Autumn," he said, turning towards his car. "If you need to talk to me about something, you'll have to wait till I'm back at work in another 3 days, and come see me at the office." Autumn Donnelly stepped to the opposite side of Quinn's car and looked at him over the roof. "I've been doing some research, and I found something I think you should see." Quinn sighed in exasperation, opened his car door, and tossed his gym bag in the back seat. All he wanted was a hot shower, a cold beer, and to not be talking to this whack job in a dark parking lot. He leaned his hands against the car and hung his head wearily. He thought very seriously about just getting in and pretending she was not there, but the Mountie in him could not be that rude. The investigator in him wanted to follow every possible lead. With great reluctance, he lifted his head to look at Autumn. "What kind of research?" he asked, hoping vehemently he would not regret the question. Autumn shrugged. "I've got some books in my private collection you might call unconventional, titles you wouldn't exactly find in a library. I looked through some of them to see if I could find anything that might help us." Quinn gritted his teeth when she said "us," but did not say anything, letting her continue. "I found some tellings of circumstances similar to the one here in Resolution. I'd like to show them to you." He wanted very much to tell her to go away, and he would come see her when the Queen was paying him to do so, but her face was so insistent that his curiosity got the better of him. He felt compelled to go see what she was talking about. "Okay," he said with a sigh. "I'll come have a look. Do you want me to meet you at your shop?" "I was actually hoping you'd give me a ride." He furrowed his brow, confused. "How'd you get here?" "I walked." "You walked? From your store?" She nodded. "Well, first from the store to your office, and then from the office to here." He gaped at her. The distance from the office to the dojo was well over 5 miles, and the weather was furiously cold. "You walked all that way? Just to see me?" She shrugged again. "I don't own a car. It was important that I come." It finally dawned on Quinn to close his mouth. "Is what you want to show me really that important?" She nodded. "All right," he said, indicating the passenger door. "Get in." The drive to Autumn's shop was brief and quiet. Quinn kept thinking that he should make an effort at conversation, but it seemed like too much work, and he could not think of any common ground for small talk. Autumn rode quietly, hands in her lap, looking out the window. The streets were mostly deserted at this late hour, and in minutes Quinn was pulling into a parking spot in the dark business district. As they got out, Quinn checked the streets around him. He knew he was not doing anything illegal or immoral, although his girlfriend might have a few questions about why he was going into a closed business with a strange woman. He was hoping he would be able to explain his reasoning sufficiently that Carrie would not feel compelled to stab him with a nail file. Autumn pulled a small key ring from the pocket of her coat, opened the front door, and Quinn stepped in. She closed the door and turned the bolt, then led him through the dark room. At the rear, near the fire exit, a narrow stairway led to an upper floor, and Autumn started up the stairs. Quinn stopped at the bottom, reluctant to go into the unknown space. Autumn looked over her shoulder, and noted the hesitation on Quinn's face. "Don't worry, Constable. I'm not going to try and seduce you. I don't pursue taken men." Quinn looked up at her, his suspicion growing. "How did you know I was taken?" He had never spoken to Autumn about Carrie or any other aspect of his life, and he did not wear a ring signifying the relationship. If one of his co-workers had given out any more of his personal information, there was going to be a severe beating for Resolution Detachment to investigate. It was either that, or he had a blonde-haired stalker. Autumn stopped on the landing halfway up the stairs and turned to face him. "It's no mystery, Constable. It's written all over you. If you look at a man's aura, you can always tell when he's in love." Quinn blushed, both from the fact that this woman could tell so much about him, and also because he knew her words were true. He had never actually told Carrie how strongly he felt for her. Maybe that needed to happen soon. He was not sure if Autumn's assessment and reassurance made him feel better, or worse, about going up to the upper floor of her shop. Still hesitant, he climbed the stairs. The upper floor of the store looked to have once been a storeroom, but had been converted, presumably by Autumn, into a small and neat apartment. The dwelling was open, with a small kitchen built into the left wall, a narrow bed near the storefront, and several other chairs around a low table in the center of the room. Along the wall to the right was a continuous row of bookshelves, filled with an eclectic collection of books. Absent was a television, computer, or any other electronic devices, save for a small radio near the sink. "Would you like some tea, Constable?" Autumn asked as she dropped her coat over the back of one of the chairs and moved towards the kitchen. Sure," he said, as he walked slowly through the room. "You've got a nice place." She shrugged as she filled a battered kettle and placed it on the small stove. "I don't make a fortune in my line of work, so it helps with my living costs to combine the store with my residence." "What exactly is your line of work?" Quinn asked. She looked at him over her shoulder. That's a little difficult to define. I take on many roles. Sometimes I'm a counselor, sometimes a healer, perhaps a guide. Mostly I try to help people when they come to me. Oddly enough, they never seem to be millionaires, and I only ask them to pay what they can." Quinn was not sure how to respond to that, and turned back to the bookshelves, to look like he was doing something. He walked down the row of shelves, scanning the spines of the books. There was everything from Charles Dickens to Danielle Steele, and all points in between. But the books that called Quinn's attention were the hundreds of volumes that were bound in what looked like real leather. Many had nothing written on them, while others had words, not in English, on the spine. As he passed the table, Quinn noted several similar books lying open and marked with broad ribbons. Autumn walked to the table with 2 steaming cups, which she set on wooden coasters, then sat in one of the thick chairs. "Please, Constable." She patted the arm of the chair next to her. "I think you'll find this interesting." Still dubious, Quinn took a seat next to her and picked up the steaming mug in front of him. The tea was dark and fragrant. He took a tentative sip and found it pleasing. Autumn dragged one of the heavy books in front of him and pulled a heavy black ribbon, marking the place between the pages that were yellowed with age. The paper itself was thick, textured, and lacked the smooth quality of a factory, and looked to Quinn to be homemade. Autumn found the place she was looking for and tapped her page with a slender finger. There was a picture on the page beneath Autumn's finger. It appeared to be hand-drawn. The scene depicted a dark courtroom where several dour-faced men in pioneer-style clothing stood around a common-looking woman, on her knees, bound with ropes. The room was presided over by a severe man in robes who stood behind a pulpit. Quinn was also surprised to see that the writing on the page was a flowing, handwritten script, and the letters were similar but not completely uniform. He started to read the caption below the picture, but the language was odd, like something you'd find in an English literature textbook. "I found this passage about the years around the time of the Salem witch trials," Autumn said, moving her finger under the picture. "It talks about a small town north of Salem called Jamesville, where the witch hysteria was felt, but not to the volume of Salem. Where they lacked in numbers, the residents in Jamesville certainly made up for in brutality." Autumn began reading from the page. "Simon James, founder of the town, and Puritan minister, decided that if the good people of Salem were rousting their witches, then the people of Jamesville should do the same. Rewards were given to anyone who could bring a witch to justice. People began turning friends and neighbors over for bags of Puritan gold. The trials were quick and brutal. Simon James himself," Autumn tapped the robed man in the picture, "presided over over the trials and found every person brought before him guilty. He whipped the townsfolk into a frenzy. Victims were violently killed. They were dragged from the courtroom screaming for mercy and hanged from the nearest tree. On some occasions, the bloodlust of the mob robbed them of sense, and the unfortunate soul was torn apart on the courtroom floor. "Okay," Quinn interrupted. "What has this got to do with resolution? Last time I checked, there weren't many hangings or dismemberments here." Autumn smiled at him, patient despite Quinn's abrupt manner. "I'm getting to that, young constable. Haven't you ever heard the story is better for the telling? Don't rush me." She looked for a passage she had been talking about and continued reading. "A year after the Jamesville trials began, terrible things happened. Occurrences, unlike the charges of the trials, might be attributed to black magic. Gentle people, never known to raise a hand to another, attacked neighbors for no apparent reason. Long-time friends committed acts of violence and cruelty against each other without provocation. Reasonable men lost their minds. There was no discernible cause." She looked up from the page onto Quinn's face, just like here in Resolution. Despite himself, Quinn grew interested and leaned over the page intently. "Okay, so what was it?" he asked. "Something in the water? Bad mushrooms? What?" Autumn smiled again at his interest and traced her finger along the page. "It says here the elder women of the village, those old enough to know the ways of the earth, but clever enough to avoid the trials, pooled their coins. In secret they hired a witch, a real witch, not a charlatan or trumped-up midwife, to come to the town and search for the source of the new trouble. They truly believed that Jamesville faced something evil and was even beyond the level of the trials." Autumn looked up at Quinn, speaking from memory, no longer reading. "Her name is not here, but it says that she declared the source to be the town church, which doubled as the courthouse where the trials were held. Some of the town's braver men, the ones who weren't part of the frenzied mobs, despite protests from Simon James that the witch was telling lies, searched the church and claimed to have done battle with something in the cellar. They stood by while the trials went on, afraid to cross Simon James, but decided they could stand by no longer. Several of them were killed in the effort. They called the thing they faced a demon, and said that it was still in the cellar and couldn't be defeated. The witch performed a ritual designed to banish the evil from the place. The townsfolk, though, just to be thorough, burned the church to the ground. Simon James, cursing them all to hell, was inside." Quinn looked from the page and the picture of the burning building to Otto's face. "So what happened?" "When the ashes cooled, the evil was gone. It may have been the ritual itself or the collective will of the town that drove it away." She closed that book and reached for another. "How come no one else knows about this?" Quinn asked. "I've never even heard of Jamesville." Autumn nodded. "That's because it's not there anymore. All the residents left shortly after the church was burned. No one ever settled there again. There's very, very little recorded history from that time because most of the townsfolk were uneducated and couldn't do more than write their names." "Okay. So if no one else knows about this, how come it's in this book?" Autumn grinned. "Some had the foresight to record proper history and hide it from the clergy so that anything they found distasteful or pagan could not be eradicated. Women, mostly. Women of my kind." "Your kind?" Quinn asked, and raised an eyebrow. She ignored the question and flipped the pages of another book. "Something similar happened in a small town in Ontario in the early 1900s, at a residential school run by the Catholic Church. A priest, a pedophile, ran the church for almost 2 decades and molested countless children. When the students and several local people began going insane, just like in Jamesville, the archbishop could no longer ignore the problem. The old priest disappeared, and the archbishop brought in a new priest, a good man this time, a man of honest faith. After a short time there, the new priest claimed to have located a demon in the school basement, directly beneath the old priest's chambers where most of the molestations had occurred. The new priest warned the archbishop, but instead of taking action, he simply tried to close the school, hoping the problem would go away. The new priest faced the evil himself and apparently exorcised it because the lunacy in the town stopped. But he traded victory for his sanity, and he had to be hospitalized because he lost his mind and kept rambling about eyes in the dark." The phrase hit Quinn like a boot in the guts, and he felt lightheaded for a moment. The eyes in the dark was the thing that tied Scooby and Jeremy Randall together. She must have seen the blood drain from his face because she looked at him, concerned. "Are you all right?" He thought about telling her he had heard the phrase before, but decided not to. Doing so will be admitting that he believed her foolishness, and he was not quite ready to buy the ticket to ride her crazy train. "So you're saying that someone is keeping a pet demon in their basement and it's making people nuts?" he asked, forcing incredulity. Autumn sighed, getting exasperated for the first time. "This is going to be harder than I thought," she said to herself. Quinn drew his eyebrows together in a scowl, unsure how to take that comment. Autumn ignored his expression and continued. "Do you believe in God?" she asked. Quinn had not been expecting the question, pausing several moments before answering. I guess I'm a bit of an agnostic," he replied. "I'm not sure what I believe in, but I have a hard time buying there's some benevolent being with a white robe and a long flowing beard that loves us all and is looking out for us." "And why is that?" Quinn thought some more. "I've seen too many things in my line of work that fly in the face of that idea. I can't believe that God, the one that Christians believe in, would let small children be molested by priests who were supposed to be his servants. I can't believe that he would let women be raped, strangled, and left to die alone in dirty alleys. I don't think that it's possible for a benevolent God to exist. Because if he did, he'd be pretty pissed. And would be getting ready to smite us all." "Well, Constable," she said, "no matter what you believe, I will tell you this. There is indeed both good and evil in this world, light and dark, heroes and villains. You talk about your line of work? Well, no one should know better than you that evil is manifested physically in the guise of men every day. And I assure you, whether you want to believe it or not, demons do, in fact, exist." Quinn stared at her, unsure whether to ask more questions or call for a straitjacket in a comfortably platted room. "You can look at me like I'm crazy all you want," she said, a previously unknown venom in her voice. "But there are dark places that most men will never see and things that modern science or conventional wisdom can't explain. The existence of demons and other things made of nothing but evil and hate are only a few of those." Quinn sat back in his chair, considering Autumn's words, struggling with disbelief. "Okay," he said, "I'll bite. If there is a demon or whatever in Resolution, how did it get here? I'm guessing that it didn't come in on the bus." She closed the book and opened a third volume. "That's a question I had as well," she said, and she flipped a few pages in the new book. "Generally, when you find a demon or a ghost or a spirit or whatever, it's because it's been there for a long time. It might have some attachment to that place. I looked a little and found this passage." She bent her head and read from the page. "Just as people, buildings, places have memories. When all the memories are bad and all the light is leached away, the fabric of the place becomes thin. When this happens, some can push through." The passage ended and Autumn raised her head. Quinn looked from her face to the page. "Is that it?" he asked. "Some what? What are they pushing through? Why is this stuff written in riddles?" Autumn flipped the book closed and the title read, "An Elementary Guide to Demons." When he saw the title, Quinn scoffed. "Where did you find these books? I seriously could not make shit up like this." Autumn glared at him a moment, her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Where I got these books is unimportant, but trust they are not fictitious. They are a collected knowledge of countless generations of intelligent and dedicated people, advocates for good, you might say. Some of what is written here comes from either personal experience or researched lore and has been passed down and retold through several generations." Quinn held up his hands. "Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any offense. But really, pushing through what?" Autumn crossed her arms over her knees and leaned forward, thinking. "This might be another thing you'll sneer at, but ours is not the only world. Don't ask me how many worlds there are or how to get to them, because I don't know. But I believe that there certainly are other places of existence. Sorry, let me do that again. But I believe that there are certainly other planes of existence. A place where demons walk freely. I'm willing to bet that the concept of hell was created by people who slipped into another plane and experienced it firsthand. Anyway, a demon would have to come from such a place." She opened the book again and tapped her fingers on the passage. "What this book is saying is that it's possible, when the location or situation is right, for the barriers between the planes to grow thin, then something that knew how could push through the barrier and force its way into our reality." Quinn shook his head and ran a hand through his short hair. "Autumn, I don't want to shit on your belief system here, but this is a little out there." He trolled his hands in the open air beside his chair. "It's all a little hard to swallow, and I don't know if I can get into it. Spells? Demons? Planes of existence? I mean, come on." She smiled again, but this time it was sad. Much of the magic is gone from the world, Quinn, and we are all poorer for it. But there is still some left. It exists in small pockets, guarded carefully by those who still believe in it, and we are few and grow less with each passing year. She sat back, running her fingers through her thick, curly hair. When she spoke again, the sadness was gone from her voice, replaced by the previous vehemence. I know you doubt me, but it makes sense, doesn't it? She threw her hands up in a questioning gesture while her voice grew in both pitch and volume. The exact same things that happened in Jamesville and Ontario are now happening here in Resolution. Both previous incidents were centered on a place of tragedy, a building where nothing but evil had been done, a church where innocent women were tried and killed for fabricated charges, and children brutally betrayed by a man who was supposed to be caring for them. Then, good people going insane with no explanation. I really think we're dealing with the same thing here. We have to find the building and its source. We have to find the demon. Quinn found himself wanting to believe her because it would at least give him some kind of answer, and someone, or something, that he could hold accountable for the events in Resolution. But in the end, it was too far for him to reach. His mind could not make the bridge from where he was to where Autumn wanted him to be. Ultimately, he convinced himself Autumn Donnelly had to be insane. He set his cup down on the table and stood up. I'm sorry, Autumn, you're asking too much. I can't do it. She stood as well as sighed. I was afraid you'd say something like that. She flapped her arms slightly in a gesture of frustration. I want to help you, you know? He was already walking towards the stairs at the rear of the room, but he stopped and looked back. But I can't do that until you're ready to believe me. I know, he said. I'm sorry. Thanks for the tea. He trotted down the stairs, listening for footfalls in pursuit. He heard nothing. He let himself out the front door of the shop. He almost staggered when he stepped outside and a gust of wind hit him. The wind carried the scent of snow. A winter storm, appearing in early autumn, was coming. He lurched across the sidewalk and got into his car. He put the key in the ignition but did not turn it. He sat, looking at his steering wheel and listening to the wind batter against the windshield, while he fought down with his own feelings and wondered if he was being too narrow-minded. Some of what Autumn said, and showed him, certainly made sense. It was like a precedent that had been set in court, documented proof that something like this had happened before. But the documentation was in handmade books that no one had ever heard of. He was so desperate for an explanation that he was almost ready to believe anything, but not quite ready to accept Autumn's idea. He was still sitting and staring at nothing when his cell phone buzzed in his pocket. He withdrew it and saw Carrie's number on the call display. He smiled. She would be a welcome piece of sanity in this shithouse crazy day. He flipped the phone open. Hey there, beautiful. Hi, her voice on the other end. You busy? Not at all. Just getting ready to head home. What's up? Sean is asleep, and I'm sitting here thinking how nice it would be to have some company. You feel up to it? I'd love to, but I kinda stink. I just finished training and I haven't showered yet. She laughed. I do have indoor plumbing, you know. And if you shower here, I'll scrub your back. And other things. Once again, Quinn found himself unable to argue with the logic or the appeal of her suggestion. He smiled again. Okay, I'll be over in a few minutes. She laughed again, throaty this time. I'll leave the front door open, because I'm going to be in the shower warming it and me up for you. He closed his phone and started the car. Carrie lived in the central residential area of Resolution in a small house that her Uncle Sam owned and rented to her for next to nothing. He could make it there in 5 minutes if he drove fast. He put his car into gear and accelerated away from the curb, using images of Carrie's face to drive Autumn Donnelly's foolishness from his mind. In a dirt-floored basement, beneath Joe Robowski's nervously pacing feet, a demon stirred. It had fed well that night and was sluggish. The human it had enthralled, the one who poisoned his own kind with brown powders and reeking crystals, had proved to be more useful than it could ever have hoped. Finding this place had been a stroke of dark luck, the likes of which it had seldom experienced in all its long life. The thrall who shared the dwelling had brought in many new humans. The community about this house was growing darker by the day, and the demon itself was growing stronger by the hour. Soon, it would be able to leave the safety of this place and move among them. Then its abilities and potential would be near to limitless. Only one thing nagged at the corner of its dark mind, something that had not felt in many of the humans' generations for several forays into this ripe world. A warrior, a guardian, was emerging. It had met his like before. Sometimes there were men of faith and dedication, others of destiny and circumstance. Always, their interference was problematic, if not disastrous. Fortunately, it had an advantage. The guardian did not yet understand and believe in his enemy, or know his own role, and so could not interfere. The warrior was on the cusp of coming to true belief, and then would become infinitely more troublesome. That could not be allowed to happen. Never before had the demon garnered so much power and been so close to its full release. It could not allow itself to be foiled by any weak, foolish, disbelieving mortal. Steps must be taken, the demon knew, to deal with this threat. Its dark mind fluttered through the possibilities until it found one that satisfied it. Summoning its power, it set an event into motion. My friends, that is the end of Chapter 5. Soon we will have Chapter 6. Once again, thank you for being with me. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.